My name is Olivia. I stood in the grand ballroom, the clinking of glasses and the buzz of conversation, a cruel symphony around me. It was our 10-year college reunion, a night meant for nostalgia and celebration, but I felt utterly alone, a ghost in my own past. Then Mark took the stage. His presence commanded attention, just as it always had. He was still the charming, confident Mark, radiating an aura of success as he held the microphone. He spoke about his thriving career, his groundbreaking projects, his global recognition. The applause was deafening, a testament to the brilliant future everyone believed he had built. My heart sank as his gaze swept over the crowd, finally landing on me. A familiar, unsettling smirk played on his lips. He cleared his throat, his voice deepening. "Of course," he began, "life isn't just about triumphs. It's about lessons, isn't it?" A ripple of nervous anticipation went through the room. Mark paused, his eyes fixed on mine, as if we were the only two people there. "I once made a significant error in judgment," he continued, his tone laced with a theatrical regret. "A relationship that, to put it mildly, held me back." My breath caught in my throat. He didn't need to say my name. Everyone knew. We had been inseparable during college, a public couple. The whispers started, a soft, venomous hum. Giggles erupted from a table nearby, followed by sharp, scrutinizing glances. I felt a fire ignite on my cheeks, a searing blush of pure humiliation. My world, which had just moments ago seemed stable, now spun wildly. My hands trembled as I gripped the stem of my wine glass. The ice clinked against the crystal, mirroring the frantic beat of my own heart. I stood there feeling like an insect under a boot. But deep down, a wild thought began to form. This was not the end of me, but the beginning of his end. He started this war, and I would finish it. His words, those cruel echoes of a past betrayal, transported me back 5 years. The memory was as vivid as the humiliating blush still creeping up my neck. Back then, Mark and I were the college sweethearts everyone envied. We were inseparable, not just romantically, but professionally too. My mind was always buzzing with ideas, and one concept, a truly disruptive tech solution, consumed my every waking moment. Mark, with his effortless charm and silver tongue, believed in it just as much as I did. I was the architect, painstakingly building the technical framework, meticulously crafting the strategy, and poring over every line of code. Mark was the public face, the magnetic speaker who could sell ice to an Eskimo, effortlessly networking and attracting potential investors. We were a formidable team, or so I thought. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, a shift began. He wanted to be the sole visionary, the undisputed leader. My contributions, he implied, were merely supportive. The tension simmered, eventually boiling over in a heated argument in our cramped apartment. "Olivia," he sneered, his eyes cold and distant, "you're brilliant with the details, but you lack vision. This idea? It's nothing without my execution. Without me, you're worthless." He packed his bags that night, taking not just his clothes, but the core of our shared dream with him. Within months, Mark had done exactly what he said he would. He secured seed funding, rebranded our shared concept, and launched it as his own startup. The media fawned over him, the young, charismatic CEO who had single-handedly built a tech empire. His company, a brainchild largely conceived in my late-night brainstorms, soared to a valuation of $50 million. While Mark graced magazine covers, I was starting from scratch. I toiled away on freelance projects, small consulting gigs that barely paid the rent. My income, painstakingly earned, was a mere fraction, a tenth, of what I had once envisioned, a stark contrast to his burgeoning fortune. He had it all, and I was left with nothing but a damaged reputation. This reunion, this grand stage for his triumphant monologue, was just another brutal reminder of how I had been stripped of everything. It made me wonder, would I ever truly escape his cruel shadow? My name is Olivia. Mark's cruel shadow, it was always there, a persistent phantom refusing to release me. After the reunion, it transformed into a monstrous, tangible entity, suffocating my every breath. The night ended in a blur of shock and humiliation, but the true torment began the next morning. His words, amplified by the echo chamber of social media, exploded across every platform. Those phrases, whispered and then screamed online, became a brand seared onto my reputation. My phone vibrated incessantly, a relentless barrage of notifications. I saw them, the comments, the reactions, the endless parade of laughing emojis and scathing remarks. They dissected my past, ridiculed my present, and predicted a desolate future. Friends, old acquaintances, even people I barely knew, offered their unsolicited opinions, most of them condemning. "She's just bitter," one read. "He clearly moved on to bigger things," another chimed in. Even in the professional world, the whispers found their way. My colleagues, once supportive, now averted their eyes, their gazes sliding away as I walked by. The air in the office, usually buzzing with collaborative energy, felt heavy with unspoken judgment. Lunch breaks became solitary affairs, coffee runs silent. I felt like an outcast, branded and shunned. A critical opportunity at my company, one I had poured my heart and soul into, suddenly vanished. I had been working tirelessly on a presentation for a senior leadership role, a promotion that would finally elevate me, give me the platform I deserved. My manager, a man I respected, called me into his office, his face uncharacteristically grim. "Olivia," he began, his voice strained, "your work has been exemplary, truly." My heart lifted for a fleeting second, only to plummet as his expression hardened. However, given recent public events, image issue, that polite corporate euphemism was a knife twisted directly into my wound. It wasn't about my skills, my dedication, or my performance. It was about Mark. It was about his deliberate public act of character assassination. My future, once so clear and bright, now felt like it was slipping through my fingers, all because of his vindictive game. The rejection stung, but the blow to my personal project was even more devastating. I had been developing a new app, something innovative and completely my own, a testament to my resilience. A promising investor, Mr. Henderson, a man known for his astute judgment and willingness to back unconventional ideas, had shown keen interest. We were on the verge of signing. He called me the day after my manager's meeting. "Olivia," he said, his voice clipped and formal, a stark contrast to his usual jovial tone, "I've reviewed the situation. While your concept is intriguing and your past work is commendable, the current PR challenges—" He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The subtext was clear. Mark's shadow had reached even here, sabotaging my every attempt to rebuild. The phone clicked, and a profound silence filled my modern, minimalist apartment. The city lights outside my window, usually a comforting backdrop, now seemed to mock me with their indifferent sparkle. I sank onto my sofa, the sleek lines of the furniture a stark contrast to the chaos within me. I curled into a ball, drawing my knees to my chest, and the dam finally broke. Tears streamed down my face, hot and relentless, blurring the elegant cityscape into an indistinguishable haze. I felt utterly, completely alone. The exhaustion was bone deep, a weariness that seeped into my very soul. How much more could I take? Was this my life now? Forever destined to be Mark's ex, forever defined by his narrative, by his cruel, calculated betrayal? Would I ever truly escape this suffocating grasp? The future, once full of ambitious plans and quiet hope, now stretched before me as a bleak, endless expanse. I just wanted it all to stop. I wanted to disappear. Then, the piercing trill of my phone cut through the suffocating silence. A strange number, anonymous, flashed on the screen. I hesitated, my hand hovering, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and a faint, irrational curiosity. Who could it be now? Another anonymous troll? Another pity call? I answered, my voice a raw whisper. A low, gravelly voice, distorted slightly, as if through a filter, spoke on the other end. "Yes," I managed, my throat tight. "I'm someone who knew Mark very well," the voice continued, slow and deliberate. "I heard what he did at the reunion." There was a pause, a significant, heavy silence. "But there are secrets, Olivia." My breath hitched. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, the screen now dark, the anonymous number gone. The silence in the apartment pressed in on me once again, but this time it was different. It wasn't empty. It was charged, buzzing with an electric tension. I felt myself sinking, deeper and deeper into a bottomless pit, almost ready to surrender to whatever fate awaited me. But that mysterious voice, it had planted a seed of curiosity, a fragile, trembling sliver of hope. Could there be something worse, something truly devastating, that Mark was hiding? Something that could change everything? I stared at my phone, the screen now dark, the anonymous number gone. The silence in the apartment pressed in on me once again, but this time it was different. It wasn't empty. It was charged, buzzing with an electric tension. I felt myself sinking, deeper and deeper into a bottomless pit, almost ready to surrender to whatever fate awaited me. But that mysterious voice, it had planted a seed of curiosity, a fragile, trembling sliver of hope. Could there be something worse, something truly devastating, that Mark was hiding? Something that could change everything? I scrolled through my recent calls, my fingers trembling slightly. There it was, the anonymous number, still lingering in my call history. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it, to let the past die. But another voice, a quieter, more insistent one, urged me on. What if this was the key? I pressed the call button, my thumb feeling heavy, almost numb. The phone rang once, twice, then a click. The same low, gravelly voice answered, but this time it was clearer, less distorted. I demanded, my voice steadier than I expected. There was a long pause, a rustle of what sounded like papers in the background. "My name is Michael Chen," he finally said. "I used to work for Mark. A senior executive, actually." His tone was laced with a bitterness I instantly recognized. I echoed. "Mark fired me, Olivia. Without cause." Michael's voice hardened, and I could feel the suppressed anger radiating through the phone. He made it seem like I was incompetent, sabotaging the company. I pressed, my mind racing. The pieces were starting to shift, to rearrange themselves in a terrifying new pattern. Michael sighed, a weary sound. "I saw things, Olivia. Things Mark didn't want anyone to see." He hesitated again, and I could sense his fear, his apprehension. "He's a dangerous man." "Please, Michael," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. "Tell me. I've lost everything because of him." His resolve seemed to solidify. "All right, Olivia. Listen closely. When Mark first launched the company, the seed funding he secured, a significant portion of it never went into the business." My stomach clenched. "Diverted it?" "He embezzled it," Michael stated flatly, the word hanging heavy in the air. "He took a massive chunk of that initial investment and funneled it into shell accounts." A cold dread seeped into my bones. This wasn't just about stolen ideas or broken trust. This was criminal. But why? "To create the illusion of rapid success," Michael explained, his voice low. "To attract even bigger investors, to make himself look like a visionary genius. He built his entire public image, his entire empire, on that initial lie." I felt a wave of nausea. All the media accolades, the fawning interviews, the young tech titan narrative, it was all a sham. A meticulously constructed lie built on fraud. "And you, Olivia," Michael continued, his voice softer, but no less impactful. "You were close to the operation from the beginning. You knew the numbers, you understood the vision." I asked, my voice trembling. A terrifying thought began to form in my mind. "Mark didn't just take your idea and run," Michael revealed, his words like sharp shards of glass. "He systematically sabotaged you. He orchestrated that internal data leak that forced you out of the company." My breath hitched. The blood drained from my face, leaving me feeling hollow and cold. Framed. He didn't just abandon me. He actively destroyed my reputation, forcing me to leave under a cloud of suspicion, all to keep his dark secret hidden. It explained why my professional life had been so difficult, why people whispered. He hadn't just smeared me at the reunion, he had done it years ago. He used your access, your past login credentials, to make it look like you were the one who leaked sensitive information. Michael elaborated, filling in the horrific blanks. He created a trail of digital breadcrumbs, all pointing directly to you, knowing you'd be too devastated and too focused on rebuilding your life to dig into the details. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering against the polished wood floor. My vision blurred. It wasn't just a breakup. It wasn't just a business betrayal. It was a calculated, insidious plot to destroy me, to silence me, to make me the scapegoat for his crimes. The tears I had shed, the humiliation I had endured, the years I had struggled, it all came rushing back, amplified 1,000-fold by this shocking revelation. Michael's voice, now distant through the phone on the floor, continued, "I only got a glimpse of the evidence, but it was enough." He covered his tracks well, but not perfectly. There are always cracks, Olivia. I stared at the ceiling, my mind a storm of rage and disbelief. Mark hadn't just stolen my vision. He had stolen my good name, my future, and then tried to erase me. He had used me, exploited my trust, not just for an idea, but to cover up a felony. The pain of betrayal intensified, twisting into a fierce, burning anger. This wasn't just about him trying to humiliate me at the reunion. That was merely a cruel flourish, a final kick while I was down. The true crime, the true betrayal, had happened long before, hidden beneath layers of charm and deception. A new resolve, cold and hard as steel, began to form within me. I wasn't just going to lick my wounds. I wasn't going to disappear. Mark thought he had buried me, but he had just given me a reason to claw my way out. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. My old files, the ones I had painstakingly backed up before my forced departure, suddenly held a new meaning. I had always been meticulous with records. Every email, every draft of our initial business plan, every financial projection I had worked on, it was all there. I started sifting through years of digital detritus. Old spreadsheets, long-forgotten project folders, expense reports from our early days. The task was daunting, like searching for a needle in a haystack, but I felt a surge of adrenaline. Hours bled into days. My apartment became a war room, littered with printouts and highlighted documents. My eyes ached, but I couldn't stop. I found the original seed funding proposals, the ones where my financial projections were clearly outlined. I compared them to the publicly available financial statements from Mark's company, statements he had proudly flaunted. The discrepancies were glaring. Numbers didn't align. Significant sums, initially earmarked for R&D and team expansion, had vanished or were reclassified under vague, opaque headings. There were mysterious vendor payments, large sums transferred to companies I didn't recognize, entities that appeared to exist only on paper. I cross-referenced bank statements I had access to from our shared early accounts before things soured. My own meticulous records from our initial budgeting phase now screamed with inconsistencies. Large withdrawals labeled as operational expenses or consulting fees didn't correspond to any actual work or purchases I remembered. The language was coded, full of jargon that had once seemed harmless but now reeked of deception. They discussed optimizing asset allocation and managing investor expectations, phrases that, in this new context, sounded like euphemisms for money laundering and financial manipulation. The most damning piece was a trail of revised financial reports. I had kept original drafts, innocent versions I had contributed to. Mark's later versions, the ones he submitted to investors, showed drastic, unexplained increases in projected revenue and asset valuation without any corresponding increase in actual, verifiable income or product development. It was pure fabrication designed to pump up the numbers. Every mismatched figure, every mysterious expense, every altered report solidified the horrific truth. Mark hadn't just been a charismatic entrepreneur. He was a con artist, a thief, a master manipulator. He had used my passion, my intelligence, my very trust, as a stepping stone for his illicit schemes. He had not only stolen our shared dream, he had perverted it into a tool for his fraud. The rage that had been a slow burn within me now erupted into an inferno. The pain of betrayal, the humiliation, the years of struggle, it all coalesced into a fierce, unyielding resolve. Mark had tried to bury me. He thought he had won. He thought he could silence me and walk away triumphant. But he was wrong. So terribly, terribly wrong. Every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, cruel and undeniable. It wasn't just a betrayal of love, or even of a business partnership. It was a genuine crime, a despicable conspiracy. Mark had turned me into a pawn in his game, but he didn't know that this pawn had just found her weapon, and she was about to call checkmate. My internal inferno of rage solidified into a cold, calculated strategy. I knew I couldn't face Mark alone, not in the intricate legal and financial landscape he had so cleverly manipulated. I needed an ally, someone sharp, trustworthy, and equally unyielding. My mind immediately went to David, a name from my past, a brilliant legal mind I had known since our university days. David and I had spent countless hours in the law library, debating cases and dissecting legal theories. He was younger than many seasoned attorneys, but his intellect was formidable, his ethical compass unwavering. He believed in justice, in truth, and I knew he would believe me. I called him that very evening, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Olivia? It's been years." David's voice was bright, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped my life. "David," I began, taking a deep breath, "I need your help. It's complicated." I laid out everything, from the initial stolen idea to the forced departure, the reunion humiliation, and finally, Michael's chilling revelations about Mark's financial schemes and how I had been framed. David listened patiently, interrupting only occasionally with a concise, probing question. When I finished, the line was silent for a moment. "Olivia," he said, his voice now serious, devoid of its initial lightness, "if even half of what you're saying is true, Mark is in deep trouble." "It's all true, David," I insisted, my voice tight with conviction. "I have the documents, the drafts, the early financial projections, my meticulously kept records." "Good," David replied, a hint of steel in his tone. "Bring everything you have. We start tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. True to his word, David was relentless. My apartment, already a battlefield of documents, was quickly dwarfed by his office, which transformed into our command center. We spread out everything. My old business plans, Mark's public financial statements, internal emails I had salvaged, bank records, and the vague, suspicious vendor payments I had identified. David, with his methodical lawyer's brain, approached it like a complex puzzle. He mapped out Mark's corporate structure, tracing the flow of money through shell companies and offshore accounts. He cross-referenced every single line item, every reported valuation, against the raw data I had collected. His analytical skills were astounding, catching subtle discrepancies I might have missed in my emotional state. "Look at this, Olivia," David pointed to a series of transactions. "They account for nearly 15% of the initial investment, a huge chunk. But Phoenix Holdings, it's a ghost company. No public record, no known address, no registered directors." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just inflating numbers, this was outright theft. I whispered, disgusted. "Or to pay off others, or to hide assets," David corrected, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a black hole. But we can trace where the money came from before it vanished into this black hole." We worked late into the nights, fueled by strong coffee and an unwavering determination. David had access to specialized forensic accounting tools, which he deployed to delve deeper into the digital trails. He recovered deleted files from old shared cloud storage, piecing together fragments of information that Mark had tried to erase. Then we hit gold. David managed to recover a series of emails from Mark's old company server. Emails Mark had meticulously purged but hadn't fully overwritten. It was an exchange between Mark and his head of IT security, a man named Brian. But the content was anything but. The instructions were disturbingly clear. Ensure the trail leads to the most plausible suspect. He named no names, but the context, the timing, and the mention of legacy credentials screamed my name. He literally ordered them to frame you, Olivia, David said, his voice laced with disbelief and outrage. This email, once verified, is irrefutable proof. My hands trembled as I read the words on the screen, a sick feeling twisting in my gut. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation of his betrayal, was horrifying. It wasn't just a convenient cover-up. It was a premeditated destruction of my life, orchestrated by the man I had once loved and trusted. As if that wasn't enough, our digital forensics also uncovered something even more damning. Deep within an encrypted folder on an old, forgotten shared drive, David found it, an audio recording. It was a seemingly casual conversation between Mark and a potential investor named Mr. Harrison, dated roughly a year after I had left the company. I need to make sure the books are optimized, if you catch my drift, Harrison. Mark's voice, unmistakably his, chuckled in the recording. We need to show maximum growth, even if some of it is creative accounting. Our early numbers were a bit soft, but we've really tightened up the projections since then. The word, once so full of hope, now tasted like ash. He was openly admitting to manipulating financial data, to creative accounting, all to lure in more money. The casualness of his confession, the arrogance in his tone, made my blood boil. He truly believed he was above the law, above consequences. With these pieces of evidence, the detailed financial discrepancies, the email orchestrating my framing, and the audio confession, we had a solid case. A criminal case. David assured me that we had enough to not only dismantle his company, but potentially land Mark in prison for fraud and possibly even obstruction of justice. The next phase was mine. With David's legal guidance, I spent hours poring over legal regulations, understanding the specifics of financial fraud, embezzlement, and defamation. I needed to understand the language, the precise terms that would resonate with authorities and the public. I researched corporate law, white-collar crime statutes, and the nuances of presenting complex financial information in a digestible, impactful way. I practiced my narrative endlessly. In front of my mirror, I rehearsed the sequence of events, the precise points I would make, the evidence I would present. My voice had to carry the weight of truth, not just the sting of personal vengeance. This wasn't about lashing out. It was about delivering undeniable facts, systematically dismantling his carefully constructed lies. David suggested a formal legal route, a direct filing with the authorities. But I had another idea, one that was far more potent. No, David, I told him, a cold gleam in my eye. He tried to humiliate me publicly. He needs to be exposed publicly. His reputation is everything to him. The reunion, David finished, a slow smile spreading across his face. Brilliant, Olivia. A room full of his peers, his potential investors, and everyone who ever believed his lies. The annual alumni reunion was just weeks away, and Mark, ever the self-promoter, was slated to be a keynote speaker, touting his supposed entrepreneurial triumphs. It was the perfect stage. A room filled not only with our former classmates, but also with prominent figures from the tech and investment world. People who had either invested in Mark's company or were considering it. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and exhilaration. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about protecting others from his deceit. It was about justice. The meticulous planning, the sleepless nights, the relentless digging, it all converged on that single night. Every piece of evidence was now meticulously organized, cross-referenced, and ready to be presented. David had even prepared a secure digital presentation, ready to be displayed at a moment's notice. The legal framework was sound. The emotional wound, though still deep, had been channeled into an unshakable resolve. Mark had spent years building his empire of lies piece by piece. Now I had gathered the tools to tear it all down, meticulously, undeniably. It was like preparing for a high-stakes trial, but with the world as our jury. The plan was perfect, without a single flaw I could detect. Every potential counter-argument, every loophole he might try to exploit, had been considered and accounted for. The evidence was solid, unassailable, and overwhelming. Now there was only one thing left to do. One final act in this long, brutal drama. I would lift my glass, not to celebrate a new beginning, but to toast Mark's spectacular public downfall. Could he possibly escape this final crushing blow? My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched Mark finish his performance. He stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the stage lights, a picture of arrogant triumph. His eyes, full of that familiar smugness, found mine in the crowd, a silent challenge in their depths. He probably thought I was just another ghost from his past, impotent and forgotten. He had no idea what storm was about to break. The applause for Mark's speech died down, a scattering of polite claps, mingling with some genuinely enthusiastic ones from those still under his spell. My turn. With a deep breath, I pushed through the tables, the faces of old classmates flashing by, some curious, some indifferent. I felt every eye on me as I made my way to the stage, a calm I didn't truly feel radiating from my posture. Reaching the podium, I picked up a champagne flute from the small table beside it, the cool glass a steadying presence in my hand. I offered a small, elegant smile to the audience, my gaze sweeping across the room. There were so many familiar faces, friends, acquaintances, and strangers who just knew the Mark they wanted to believe in. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. "It's truly wonderful to see so many familiar faces, and some new ones, gathered here tonight. Reunions are always a fascinating opportunity, aren't they?" I paused, letting my words hang in the air, deceptively innocuous. I could see Mark, still standing near the stage, his expression one of mild amusement, perhaps curiosity. He was waiting for me to say something nice, something supportive, or perhaps something awkward. He wouldn't have to wait long. Many of us have had mentors, guides, or even significant figures who shaped our paths, I continued, my eyes now fixed directly on Mark. People who, perhaps unknowingly, taught us some of the most expensive lessons of our lives. A ripple of unease stirred in the audience. The air shifted. Mark's amused expression faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of confusion. And tonight, I pressed on, my voice hardening just a fraction. I want to speak about the truth behind the dazzling facade of success that some individuals build. The kind of success that at first glance seems impeccable, self-made, and undeniably brilliant. I took a slow sip of my champagne, my eyes never leaving Mark's. He had started to frown, a muscle twitching in his jaw. The audience was silent now, sensing the shift in my tone, the underlying current of something more than just sentimental reflection. "Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, using his name for the first time in my speech. "You always had a flair for the dramatic, a talent for storytelling. And tonight, I believe it's time for a different kind of story to be told." I nodded subtly towards the side of the stage. Suddenly, the large projection screen, which moments before had displayed nostalgic photos, flickered to life. A complex financial spreadsheet filled the screen, highlighted with stark red numbers and intricate arrows. Gasps broke out from the tables closest to the screen. Some of you in this room, perhaps many of you, have invested in Mark's vision for Ascend Global, I stated, my voice ringing with authority. What you might not have seen, however, are these numbers. As I spoke, David, with the help of the audiovisual team we had discreetly arranged, smoothly navigated the presentation. Transactions showing the exact dates and amounts that vanished into the ghost company. The raw figures of embezzlement, glaringly obvious, were displayed for all to see. A company with no legitimate operations, no public record, and conveniently, no real directors, I explained, pointing to the screen. Mark, who had taken a step forward as if to interrupt, froze. His face was draining of color, his initial anger quickly replaced by genuine horror. His eyes darted from the screen to me, then to the stunned faces in the crowd. "But it goes deeper than just financial trickery," I continued. And the screen flashed to the next piece of evidence. The email thread between Mark and Brian, his head of IT security. The damning lines, "Simulate a breach scenario," and "ensure the trail leads to the most plausible suspect," were magnified. "This, Mark, is where your ambition became truly malicious," I announced, my voice laced with a cold fury. "This email explicitly details your instruction to your IT head, Brian, to fabricate a data breach." A collective gasp swept through the room. The murmurs erupted into a roar of disbelief and outrage. People were whispering, pointing at Mark, then at the screen. Investors, identifiable by their expensive suits and stern expressions, were already pulling out their phones, their faces grim. Mark finally found his voice, a strangled, desperate sound. "Olivia, this is insane. Those are fakes. She's lying." He lunged towards the stage, but a security guard, who had been subtly positioned near the podium, stepped in front of him, blocking his path. I ignored his pathetic outburst, my gaze unwavering as the screen changed again. Now the audio file appeared, a simple waveform icon. A tense silence fell over the room once more, broken only by the sharp, authoritative click as David initiated playback. Mark's voice, unmistakable and arrogant, filled the ballroom. "I need to make sure the books are optimized. If you catch my drift, Harrison, we need to show maximum growth, even if some of it is creative accounting. Our early numbers were a bit soft, but we've really tightened up the projections since then." The confession hung in the air, indisputable, damning. The casual chuckle at the end of his own words was sickening. The murmurs escalated into shouts of anger. I saw Mr. Harrison, a prominent venture capitalist, standing rigidly at his table, his face a mask of fury, already on the phone, his voice a low, furious rumble. Other key investors, their faces etched with betrayal, followed suit. Board members who had arrived with Mark looked utterly bewildered and horrified. Mark looked like a cornered animal, his eyes wide with terror, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. He stammered, incoherent, trying to deny the undeniable evidence blaring for everyone to hear. But no one was listening to him anymore. I raised my glass higher, the champagne shimmering under the lights. My eyes, cold and triumphant, met Mark's terrified gaze one last time. A toast to Mark. May he finally reap what he has sown. I took a final, deliberate sip, then placed the glass back on the podium. Almost immediately, a group of stern-faced individuals, some in uniform, others in sharp suits, moved swiftly and purposefully towards Mark. They weren't just security guards. These were official figures, their presence undeniable. Mark's knees buckled. His face, a moment ago contorted with anger, was now pale with utter defeat. His carefully constructed empire, his polished reputation, his entire career. They all imploded in that single devastating moment, right before the eyes of everyone who mattered. His future, which he had so meticulously fabricated on the backs of others, shattered into a million pieces. But even as I watched his world collapse, a strange sense of calm settled over me. This was a monumental victory, a public downfall of epic proportions. Yet, deep down, I knew this wasn't truly the end of my story. And it certainly wasn't the end of what Mark would have to face. The immediate aftermath of that night was a blur of flashing lights, hushed conversations, and the rapid, decisive actions of the authorities. Mark, once the epitome of charm and success, was led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and utter despair. The elegant ballroom, moments earlier filled with the hum of celebration, was now a scene of chaos and bewildered silence. I watched him go, not with triumph, but with a profound sense of exhaustion. It was over. The charade, the betrayal, the relentless pressure, it all culminated in that single shattering moment. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, one I hadn't realized I was carrying until it was gone. The news spread like wildfire. By morning, Mark's name was plastered across every financial news outlet. The detailed evidence I had presented left no room for doubt. The visionary CEO of Ascend Global was exposed as a calculating fraudster. The fallout was swift and merciless. Mark was immediately suspended, then formally terminated from Ascend Global within days. The company, already reeling from the public scandal and mass investor withdrawals, spiraled into an irreversible decline. Many of the prominent figures in that ballroom, including Mr. Harrison, initiated civil lawsuits. Criminal charges, ranging from embezzlement to corporate fraud, quickly followed. Ascend Global, once touted as a rising star, collapsed spectacularly. Its stock plummeted to zero, its assets frozen, and its reputation irrevocably tarnished. The vision Mark had so meticulously crafted crumbled, leaving behind a trail of devastated investors and betrayed employees. It was a stark reminder that foundations built on deceit are destined to fall. My own life, however, took an entirely different trajectory. Initially, there were questions, inquiries, and then a deluge of apologies and admiration. My name, Olivia, once dragged through the mud by Mark's smear campaign, was now cleared. People saw me not as a bitter ex or a saboteur, but as someone who had bravely stood up for the truth. I became, to my surprise, a sort of reluctant hero. Messages flooded my inboxes, from former colleagues expressing their support, from strangers thanking me for my courage, and from investors who lauded my integrity. Suddenly, the industry, which had been so quick to condemn me, was just as quick to embrace me. Offers started pouring in. Major corporations, impressed by my strategic thinking and my unwavering commitment to ethics, extended invitations for senior positions. Venture capitalists, those same ones who had flocked to Mark, now saw the potential in my own ethically sound projects. My original startup idea, the one I had put on hold for Mark, was now attracting serious interest and funding. It was an overwhelming period, a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and rebuilding. Yet through it all, I never felt a sense of vengeful glee. The satisfaction was deeper, more profound. It wasn't about Mark's downfall as much as it was about my own liberation. I finally felt free. Free from the constant fear, free from the manipulation, free from the shadow of a past that had threatened to define me. It was the feeling of justice, pure and undeniable, washing over me. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. I moved into a new apartment high above the bustling city, its expansive windows offering a panoramic view of the vibrant metropolis. It was a space that felt entirely my own, a testament to my regained independence and a symbol of my future. One evening, I stood by the window, a warm mug in my hands, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city. A small, contented smile played on my lips. The past felt distant, almost like a dream. The pain was still a part of my story, but it no longer held me captive. I realized then that true value wasn't found in tearing others down or in seeking vengeance. It was found in the quiet strength of fighting for what is right, in protecting my own integrity, and in building something meaningful with my own two hands. My success now felt authentic, earned through resilience and truth, not through deception. I had once thought Mark had taken everything from me, but in the end, he only taught me a valuable lesson: that nothing could take away the strength and resilience within me. And this is the story of how I took my life back. If you also have experienced betrayal, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support my channel.